I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favour of the draft resolution contained in document S/2024-835 please raise their hand? Those against? The result of the voting is as follows: 14 votes in favour, 1 vote against, 0 abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements after the vote. And I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, we thank Guyana and other elected members of the Council for the courage they've shown and for their efforts to move today's draft resolution forward. We supported the document and we pay tribute to those responsible members of the Council who, just like us, understand that there's a need to have the speediest and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza as a gauge for general stabilization in the region. And now I would like my colleagues to listen very carefully to the following part of my statement. Once I finish, I'll explain why. It is shocking that the U.S. has vetoed an effort to save the lives of Palestinians and Israelis, though perhaps we shouldn't be surprised about it. For months, the United States has obstructed and obfuscated, standing in the way of the Council action to address the catastrophic situation in Gaza and playing on one side of the conflict to advance its own political objectives at the expense of Palestinian lives. Today, the Council would have come together to call for a comprehensive ceasefire, protection of civilians, and solution to the whole complex of humanitarian problems faced by the Palestinians. The U.S. claims it is in the interest of the regions, but votes against a resolution supported by the majority of regional countries, and which would have passed for the benefit of the region. We could have demanded today an immediate, unconditional, and sustainable ceasefire in Gaza, as well as an immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. It is unconscionable that the U.S. would cynically stand in the way of demanding such actions to save lives in the world's worst humanitarian crisis. We do not need to be lectured by the United States on hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is what they exhibit every day in different conflicts, not respecting state sovereignty and shamelessly imposing their own rules and interfering in their internal affairs. As a result, tens of thousands of civilian lives have been lost. We are watching the situation closely and will continue to call out abuses and those who are responsible, particularly the United States. We must continue to amplify the voices of Palestinian people who are calling for peace, prosperity, and justice. And the United States cannot stand in the way of that. You gathered, I take it, that what I've just quoted is almost a direct quote from yesterday's statement by the United States during the voting on the resolution on Sudan. And in our view, this was a very appropriate quote. We would like to thank our American colleagues for the fact that they relieved us of the need to preparing most of the statement in the explanation of the vote because of their statement yesterday. Now I will address my American colleagues and say that you today have definitively shown that you are fully responsible for the death of tens of thousands of innocent civilians, for the privations of refugees, suffering of hostages, and the illegally detained Palestinians. It was very interesting to hear the representative of the American representative today in the wake of the vote. For example, he said that the resolution does not contain provisions on the release of hostages. well, it does contain such a provision. Perhaps the U.S. representative should read through the resolution before voting against it. He also stated that the resolution does not have a condemnation of the attack on the 7th of October. I would like to remind our American colleagues here that it was the United States who, on the 18th of October 2023, vetoed a Security Council resolution which condemned a condemnation of the 7th of October attack. The United States positioned themselves as a key partner not just for Israel but also for the Arab states. But they vote against resolutions who are in the interest of all of the Arabs and supported by the Arabs themselves. If the draft had been passed, we could have demanded that Israel end its deadly attacks in Gaza, in the West Bank, that it rein in its continued aggression against Lebanon and Syria. We could have sent a very clear signal to the parties to end violence and move on to the political and diplomatic settlement of the Palestinian issue. But the cold and cynical opposition by the United States to the simple demand on behalf of the Council to save human lives is an unconscionable and inhumane act. We have no doubt that the Israelis themselves are interested in ending the spiral of violence, and we categorically reject attempts to present the events on the 7th of October of 2023 as the starting point for the bloody events in the region now. The reasons for that are much deeper, and they have to do with a very old historic injustice where one side was given the opportunity to create their own state, and others have been consistently denied the exact same right. We will continue speaking resolutely for demanding the end of violence against Palestinians. No doubt, we will continue calling out the abuses and hypocrisy by the United States when it comes to settling the situation. We will not allow the United States to muzzle the voice of the Council when and continue emboldening further merciless operations by Israel. Our common duty is to make sure that the voices of the absolute majority of the people on this planet to end the spiral of violence in favor of a just settlement of the Palestinian issue on the basis of an acknowledged basis and the desire to become a full member of the UN, that these voices be heard. We must bring peace, stability, and prosperity to the Middle East. And no one, including the United States and other Western states who indulge them, has a right to inhibit these aspirations. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. The representative of the United States has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. My apologies for taking the floor. I just need to respond very briefly to some comments made by the representative of the Russian Federation. Let me just say, as I've said many times, Russia is in no position to single out any state for being responsible for the deaths and killings of civilians when every day it is raining down hundreds of missiles, bombs, and UAVs on the people of Ukraine, conducting some of the most savage and barbaric attacks seen in Europe since World War II. We will continue to remind the world of this barbarity carried out by a permanent member of the Security Council in blatant violation of the UN Charter. So, Madam President, I would say to my Russian colleague that he should think twice before accusing anyone of hypocrisy. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. The representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
Madam President, I'll be brief. I have a rhetorical question to the American representative. You don't have to answer. Do you have any other narrative apart from the one that he has delivered today? When we hear what he's saying, we get the impression that we're watching Groundhog Day, the movie. Groundhog Day. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement.
What do you guys think? Should Russia even be allowed to accuse the United States of the Israel and Palestine problem when they invaded Ukraine themselves? Please leave your comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you for making it this far. If you like this video, you might want to share it with a like-minded friend. Thank you, and as always, stay blessed.